Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Tough Friends Collective podcast with me, your host, Chelsea Gomez, also known as Oh, You're So Tough. If you are coming back for another episode, welcome back. Thank you so much for listening. If you're liking it, please go ahead and give me a nice rating. I would truly appreciate it. If you are new here, just a brief intro to what this podcast is. It's all about cancer, but speaking about cancer in real, authentic, and candid ways. Today's topic is going to be a little bit different than what I have done so far with this podcast. And I think it's a topic that isn't spoken about enough from the patient or survivor side. This topic is going to be on cancer fakers and the effect that they have on actual people going through cancer, and just kind of highlighting our perspective on the matter, because I think a lot is talked about, obviously, when the person does, fake their illness, they're talking about them, they're talking about the people who donated, et cetera, but I don't think that they talk enough about how, when somebody does that, how it affects the cancer community as a whole in a whole bunch of ways. And so I want to talk about that in this podcast to open up that conversation. This topic was something that was on my mind because there is a podcast called Scamanda, and it's all about a girl who faked having exactly the same cancer as I had, which is Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I listened to this whole podcast, and now it's becoming, I think, an ABC series. So a whole bunch of people have been sending it to me on Instagram, like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And yeah, I've seen it. I haven't seen, obviously it's not out yet, but I listened to the whole entire podcast, and I've followed other similar stories like Madeline Russo, the one from Australia, is her name like Belle maybe? She faked having brain cancer. And yeah, it's been a lot in the last couple years. I feel like maybe the pandemic sort of made it easier for these people to get away with it. I'm not really sure, but this podcast isn't a commentary on what they did. Obviously, we know that it was wrong what they did. It's a commentary more on like what these people do and its unintended maybe effects on the people they are pretending to be. First of all, one of the main issues that arises when one of these stories is uncovered is that it calls into question all legitimate patients and survivors. Almost immediately, I see comments on these sorts of, when these shows come out, I see comments like, oh, this is why I don't help anyone online, or this is why I don't donate to things like that, or this is why I question things. And while there are bad people out there, as we can see from the topic of this podcast, there are legitimate people who are being called into question. It's really tough, especially on folks who don't have the traditional sick look. Like if you still have your hair or you're still looking pretty healthy, what you look like on the outside really doesn't have any bearing on what's going on in the inside for a lot of us. I know when I was going through chemo the first time, I looked pretty healthy for the most part. I had a headscarf on, but nobody really knew what was going on outside of that. And there's plenty of folks, like a lot of my metastatic friends, my chronic cancer friends, who are going through long-term treatments, that maybe their side effect isn't hair loss. And so people give them a side eye when they feel tired or they ask for help. And so these cancer fakers automatically put a doubt in people's mind and cause them to hesitate helping people who actually really need help. Not only does it stop people from wanting to help or looking at people like, are you disingenuous? It can cause people to really be emboldened in their accusations of people who are actually sick. Here's a real example. I am not going to say the person's name just out of respect because they have since passed, but there is a person I followed on Twitter at the time, X, Twitter, whatever, and this person was going through metastatic breast cancer treatment. Now, metastatic breast cancer treatment, as we all, if you don't know, let me tell you, it's a lifelong thing. It doesn't just go away. You can become no evidence of disease at certain points depending on your particular cancer. But the thing is, it's always there. And so most folks spend the rest of their life in treatment. So this particular person on Twitter was an outspoken, advocate in the metastatic breast cancer space and shared a lot of their life online, especially like their, parenting and their treatments and the real view of what it really was like to go through it. And I remember around the time that they were really getting worse or progressing in their cancer, I remember seeing them tweet about an experience where I think it was even fellow patients in that community. I'm not 100% sure on who it was, but it was potentially fellow patients, potentially people outside of it that were accusing her of faking her illness. And I remember so clearly that it was just nasty, and so much of what she was sharing was happening to her was like online, I think message boards too, where people were making up things about her. And I remember she posted, I think, like an email from one of the people and just the things they were writing and accusing her of and trying to add up things that weren't true in their mind. And then it was like, I think a couple months later, she literally passed away from metastatic breast cancer, what they accused her of not having. And so on top of having to deal with this illness, knowing that you're getting worse, trying to explain that to your daughter and your family, you had to also deal with this on top of it, this bullying, this online bullying. And I honestly believe a lot of this behavior is because stories like Scamanda and Madeline Russo have become so, like, everybody wants to talk about it because it's like the thing, like, oh, somebody fake cancer. I, for one, like on my page, never wanted to continually keep talking about these people. This is the one exception, is going to be this podcast, because I think that it's a conversation that is much bigger than these people. But so many people were talking about it, making YouTube videos, and just putting this out there, making it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think that these people deserve to get your attention. I really don't. I think that that's a lot of times what they're looking for is attention, money, but a lot of times attention, because when you get diagnosed with cancer, it is like an onslaught of people wanting to hear what's going on with you, maybe come see you, etc., try to help. And so I truly believe some people just get addicted to that, like, feeling, who are doing these sorts of bad things. We shouldn't give these people more attention, in my opinion. That's what they're looking for. And if we don't give it to them, then they more quietly go away. And yes, they should be held accountable, go through the court system, etc. But we don't need to keep giving them the platform that they wanted. The next sort of effect that this has on folks in our community is the resources that these people take up that are not able to be given to a legitimate person who needs it in this community. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead and quote a BuzzFeed article about Madeline Russo and what sorts of things she was given by folks trying to support her. I will link this BuzzFeed article in the show notes as well if you want to read it, but I'm going to go ahead and read this to you. Madison Maddie Russo, age 19, has been charged with theft over the alleged scam, for which she raked in more than $37,000 from hundreds of GoFundMe donors. Her medical records, which were obtained by subpoena during the investigation, showed that she had never been diagnosed with any kind of cancer or tumor. And here's something that she said in one of her many interviews. At 19 years old, I don't know if I will live to see the day I graduate from college, get married, or become a mom, she told her local newspaper. In the meantime, I will fight. She also served as a guest speaker for the National Pancreas Foundation in Chicago, as well as at her university, and appeared on a podcast for cancer nonprofit Project Purple, police said. I'm not sure if I read this somewhere or I'm imagining it, but I'm pretty sure that there was another sort of video or article about her where she got some sort of like grant or something from one of those organizations. And so, example, all of these GoFundMe donations, all of these opportunities, resources, things that are out there, people genuinely wanting to do something good by helping someone, all of that is thrown into question when somebody does something like that. And so, as I said, it's taking away not only the resources money-wise, but opportunities. Like, she was flown to Chicago to give some sort of speech about her cancer. I'm guessing because she was young and pretty and upbeat and talking about fighting and she's strong and blah, blah, blah. And that's the sort of thing that people eat up who are outside of this community. And she took advantage of it. She knew exactly what to do. I think she was mostly on TikTok. And I've noticed on TikTok, especially, that any sort of video about illness or cancer, especially involving a young person, can get a lot of attention and followers very quickly. And a lot of that can come with folks who get invested in your story. They really are like grief tourists, but they're there to see what's going on with you, hear about your story, and then in turn, that sometimes turns into financial support, and people donate to the GoFundMe. And again, that's taking away from other people who actually need help. It's just heartbreaking to think that, she's getting $37,000 worth of donations for nothing when there are people out here who are going through cancer and can't even pay their bills or pay for their medication or anything. And so, once again, the impact of what this person does, it's not just on the people who donated. Yeah, it sucks you donated and the person scammed you. It's not right. But it sucks for the other people who really did need help, who were pushed to the side or maybe didn't get it in the process of this person committing a crime and tricking people. And then you couple that with the side eyes and the mistrust that this sort of thing has perpetuated. And it's just a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for so many people not to get help and not to be believed for these sorts of things. And I think it's really, really sad that everyone now, because of these people, is given a little side eye on whether or not they're sick. I mean, I've had even people contact me with their stories and have said they're being accused of things and wanting to send me their medical records to prove it. And it's sad. It's really sad to even say you have to do that. It's sad. I don't know how many more times I can say it's sad, but it really is sad. So yeah. The next thing I want to talk about in the way that this sort of scam affects folks in the cancer community is the utter just invalidation that most of these cancer fakers bring to our experience. I've noticed, at least, that most of these people lean into these cancer muggle type things like, I'm so brave, I'm so strong, I'm an inspiration, I'm gonna keep fighting. Everyone could have it worse. Everything happens for a reason. And not to say if you lean into those things as a legitimate patient, that's wrong. But that is the sort of thing that people who are outside of this community are going to eat up. That's the sort of story that's covered. That's the sort of thing people want to see. They don't want to see the average patient being sick, throwing up, saying things suck, being sad. That's what I've talked about on my Instagram page for the last 4 years, is this expectation that people have of you. And these people know that they will feed right into that expectation and, everyone will feel so bad for me. But they'll feel like I'm still fighting, I'm a warrior, and they want to support me because it makes them feel good inside. I find that so upsetting. And every time one of these people comes out, I feel a genuine, I don't know how to explain it. It's like a shift in people's day-to-day who are in the community. I feel like kind of like a dark fog has descended on us because, you get so many people sending you this article and talking about it, and people have all these opinions, and people from outside of the community want to insert their opinions about, this is why I never support people like this. And it's like, damn, like what Maddie said in that article, none of us expect to get cancer as a young person, and we're all devastated as we go into it and try to navigate that. But some of us are actually doing that. And when this person is sitting here using, like, going on the internet and looking at our public pages and taking some of that information and swirling it into theirs and looking at how IVs are set up when people are sharing, it's just disgusting. And it happens. And I know that it discourages some people from actually sharing their experiences because their photos have been stolen. The stories have been stolen. I've even seen where people will literally just go and copy an entire story of someone and start saying, like, that's their cancer experience just to get people scammed into giving them money. And it makes these safe places for us not so safe. And it's scary. And like I said, it invalidates a lot of what we go through. Like, no matter if that statement she said is true or not about, 19, navigating cancer is so scary. I'm sure it would have been scary if it was real, but like, you putting that out into the world and not just seeing that on paper, and then if you are really going through it and you say something similar, I just think that it just doesn't feel good. It feels like crap, honestly. Along the lines of, undermining our experiences, I think that people who do this sort of scam cause a lot of issues for us as young people going into medical spaces, ER, primary care, wherever, when we have our symptoms and we're asking to be taken seriously and we're not taken seriously. I can't tell you how many times I've heard of a young person who got sent home with anxiety when it was actually cancer, including myself. One of my first, places I went for help with my cancer, I was told, oh, it's okay, you just need, ADHD medicine. Most people can't focus. These symptoms are just normal for somebody your age who's working a lot. Wasn't taken seriously at all. Who knows what the outcome of my cancer could have been if I would have been taken seriously earlier into seeking help for symptoms. But that's the reality of what happens to young people with not only cancer, but other illnesses day after day after day. They're not taken seriously. And I truly believe part of it is because of people like this. I mentioned this a little earlier, but just want to dive into deeper about when these sorts of people infiltrate the communities that we have made online. Even like looking at the announcement reel on Instagram about the Scamanda show, I went to the comments and I saw somebody who legitimately has cancer who was like, glad I only knew her for a short while, but still upsetting or something to that effect. And right there, it's so unfortunate how these people prey on the good nature of not only folks outside the community, but folks inside the community. Because I'm telling you, the people who are in the cancer community genuinely, most of them have the biggest hearts and they'll do anything to help you. And most especially when it's a fellow patient or fellow survivor, there's just a sort of connection there with someone. They just get it. And so you become really close really fast with these sorts of people. And that's what they're banking on. They're banking on the fact that you aren't going to be asking too many questions because you wouldn't want to have people ask you. And you're going to be giving your friend the benefit of the doubt. And a lot of times with cancer friends, you don't hear from them for some time because maybe something happens with their health, especially online, like just online cancer friends. And so someone, randomly disappears and then reappears and they have a pretty good explanation. Nobody's really asking any questions. And I remember listening to the Scamanda podcast. I think there was at least one or two other women who had cancer who were friends with this person and just felt completely betrayed when it came out because, they had put their trust in her. They did feel like it was a cancer friend, and a good cancer friend, losing somebody like that, it is devastating. Most times we lose them to the cancer, but in this instance, you're dealing with like, this person wasn't even real, and now I don't also have my cancer support system, and then also I'm not feeling safe in these places I thought I was safe in. And it's just really confusing and upsetting. I can only imagine, looking at that article about Maddie, that nonprofit, They thought they were doing a good thing. They were giving a young person a platform to talk about their cancer. They were trying to help, and they were taken advantage of. And I think that probably makes even organizations feel like, what do we do? How do we verify? What's going over the line? Like, how can we balance that while still being able to help people? Another unintended effect of that sort of situation I have seen is when something like that comes out within the cancer community, it's big news everywhere. It's big news, like, especially when one is like confirmed. Here's all the evidence. Here's an article about it. Here's a podcast. Here's everything. That sort of thing spreads like wildfire, not only in the non-cancer community, but also the cancer community. And I have seen a lot of justified upset towards that person, that situation. But it becomes like a toxic sort of hole that some people get into with like commenting on everything about them and researching and just getting more and more and more and more upset. And I understand not faulting people for looking into things or being upset or having their opinion. I just feel like, as I stated earlier in this podcast, I don't think that focusing our precious energy, especially as you're going through treatment and trying to survive, focusing our precious energy and making ourselves feel bad by continually talking about that person or focusing on it, I don't think that's healthy for us. I think that our time could be better spent, but I understand why people do it and I understand why it happens. But right there, it's just like, you came into our safe space, whether you came in as a participant or you came in crashing in with your story that's been exposed, and you made all these people feel bad, you made all these people angry, and then it's just spiraling and spiraling and spiraling. And so I just want to say, you know, if you are a cancer survivor, patient, thriver, however you identify, it isn't your job to track these people down or hold them accountable. We have a justice system for that. And it's okay to be upset and it's okay to talk about it. But I hope that you don't let it take over your life for even a small period of time. And I hope you don't let it make you so upset that it's all you can think about that day. And I know it's hard because of everything we've already gone through in this podcast. I think you can spend your time much better than wasting it on these people who didn't deserve to be heard from at all. The last thing I want to talk about in relation to this topic is how most cancer fakers spread misinformation and how harmful that is to the community. I've seen a lot of different people who are these sorts of scammers talk about, you know, natural treatments or climbing to the top of a mountain and putting crystals on your head. Or I think even Madeline Russo talked about how some sort of oil or supplement or something let her keep her hair during chemo, leading people to be scammed into that. Because I can tell you, when you're going through cancer and you're going to lose your hair, you'll do pretty much anything to try to keep it. I can only imagine how many people listened to what she was saying and purchased that product. Now, leading people to purchase a product and waste their money is maybe the lower end of the harm that misinformation can do. It's still harmful and not good. But then you get to the people who are talking about miracle cures, like the woman in Australia. She had brain cancer, if I remember correctly, and was touting how she overcame brain cancer with like all natural treatments, to the point that I believe she even had a health app with Apple at one point. It was on a wide scale, this fraud. And so folks who legitimately had cancer, like brain cancer of the same type, were, you know, buying her book, following her diets, following her advice. And I can only imagine that if these same people followed everything she said and didn't follow their doctor's advice to actually take the medication or the chemotherapy or the surgery or the radiation that is proven to actually work for their cancer, if they didn't take that and they instead took the snake oil cure from this faker, you can put one and one together to realize that this can even kill people. Misinformation, health misinformation, medical misinformation can kill people. And these people don't give it a second thought. They see the money, they see the attention, and they're not worried about what effect it's having on people who are legitimately going through this. And it's sad. The whole theme of this episode is just how sad this sort of behavior is. But I think that it's something that we need to talk about more, and not just about, like I said, not just about that person and the money and blah, 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 but what effect this is having on actual patients. And I believe, like I just said, I believe it's killing people in some instances. You really have to be careful with the people that you allow to have a say in what you're doing with your cancer treatment. You really do. You need to look into everything and not just take everything at face value on social media, especially. And it's just so harmful, this misinformation that these people especially come out with. So just have a vigilant eye and keep your wits about you when you're on social media, and question everything and listen to your doctor. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap up this episode. Thank you for those who made it to this point. I know it's not an easy topic to listen to, and it wasn't an easy decision to even make this podcast because, like I said, I don't like to give these people attention, and it's hurtful and upsetting and triggering. But the more that we don't talk about it, the more that these people are allowed to kind of operate in the shadows. One last thing, I just want to ask, if you do enjoy this podcast, please give it a nice rating on wherever you're listening. It truly does help me out. It's just a one-woman show over here, so any support you can give me really does help. And yeah, sending you all a big hug. I know this topic sucks, but you're amazing and you're loved. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.